Hey everyone, my oral presentation is going to be on aviation English, which is known as the language of the skies. Aviation English is a unique alphabet and vocabulary consisting of around 300 terms that people in the airline industry are required to learn and differs from everyday English that you and I use. They not only have to learn the words but exact pronunciation as well so they can communicate with each other easily. Today I will be discussing the history of how the English language became the language of the skies, why it was chosen, how it is assessed, and how it differs from standard English language. So when did the English language get elected as the language of the skies? World War II was a very important event that catapulted the development of the aeroplane. This development led to the creation of the network of passenger and freight carried planes, and by the end of World War II, the English-speaking communities dominated this industry. During the Chicago Convention in 1944, the international community came together for the first time and decided they needed to establish some ground rules and regulations relating to air travel. So they created the International Civil Aviation Organization. By 1951, the English language became the second language in most countries in the world, so it was deemed as the de facto international language of aviation. So why was English chosen as the language of the skies? A set language was in need to allow the entire airline industry to communicate easily to help alleviate basic problems due to miscommunication. With pilots and traffic controllers coming from all sorts of backgrounds, this universal language was needed for there to be an effective way to communicate. The English language became the language of aviation mainly due to its popularity. The International Civil Aviation Organization recommended English as exclusive language for radio communications in the airline industry because, number one, it was convenient, and two, it facilitated the widespread use of the phonetic alphabet, such as Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, etc., and the universal understandings of emergency terms such as Mayday and Pan Pan, which I'll explain later. So how is English aviation assessed? The International Civil Aviation Organization requires everyone who works in the airline industry to undergo a formal language proficiency assessment. Non-native English speakers are tested in their level of proficiency of the English language. In the evaluation, they are tested on pronunciation, sentence structure, vocabulary, comprehension, and how they interact with others. They are required to have at least an intermediary level of English and be reassessed every 6 years. Native English speakers are not off the hook, though. Even though native speakers are typically rated at the highest level of proficiency, they still struggle to communicate in aviation English. They tend to use non-standard aviation terms and speak either too quickly or lack patience when speaking to non-native speakers. This can worsen in an emergency situation, making it even more vital for native English speakers to take learning aviation English seriously. So why is language proficiency assessment required? Well, in 1977, the deadliest accident in aviation history took place on the Spanish island of Tenerife. A Pan Am and KLM flight, both Boeing 747s, collided on a runway during takeoff. In this incident, air traffic controllers cleared one plane for takeoff, causing it to collide with another plane, killing a total of 583 people. This accident was blamed on the fact that they were using non-standardized aviation language, including ambiguous terms such as okay, during their communication between one of the aircraft controllers and pilots. In 1996, another tragic airplane accident happened over India when a Saudi Arabian flight in Kazakhstan flight collided mid-air over a village, killing all 349 people on board. This mid-air collision was blamed on the miscommunication error between the tower and radio operator. Human error causes most accidents involving aircraft, and clear and understandable communications help reduce this risk. So how does aviation English differ from standard English language? Our aviation English is solely based on the English language, but there are some things that make it different. The first thing is the phonetic alphabet. This alphabet was originally created by the military to help transmit messages more clearer over radio communications amongst the static and noise. Instead of using like the regular ABCs, it replaces them with terms such as Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, Hotel, India, and so weiter, and so weiter. Wait a second. Etc., etc. So instead of saying we are approaching AED, they would say something like we are approaching Alpha Echo Delta. The next big difference between standard English and aviation English is the way they say their numbers. Pilots pronounce the numbers similar to standard English with a few exceptions. The number 3 is pronounced tree. The number 5 is pronounced five. The number 9 is pronounced niner. So instead of saying air traffic control, this is flight 3591, they would say air traffic control, this is flight 3591. So aviation English also differs from standard English because they have terms that are English words but have different meanings to them. Here are some interesting terms that the aviation English uses, which the everyday person does not really know about. So the first one is feet wet. This is to alert air traffic controllers that an aircraft is flying over water. If you say feet dry, it's when they are flying over land again. Zulu time. Since planes are constantly flying through different time zones, they use Greenwich time as their universal time zone to follow. George. This is the autopilot of onboard the plane. The pilot normally switches to autopilot when he reaches the cruising altitude, so you will hear the term used in a sentence like, George is flying the plane now. Roger. Contrary to popular belief, this does not mean yes. It means received or I heard you. Deadhead. This is when pilots or flight crew fly on a commercial flight amongst the passengers and are not on active duty. Pan-pan. This is an emergency call pilots use to signal traffic control for their immediate attention. Mayday. This is a distress call that comes from the French word m'aider, which directly translates to help me. Souls. This is the number of bodies that are on the plane, including pilots and crew. This is also the number of persons that will be needed to search for in case there is a disaster. Another interesting tidbit is that the airline industry has borrowed many popular nautical words from the shipping and sailing industry, which most English speakers know about, such as boarding, manifest, cockpit, captain, and crew. So in the end, this is just another example of how far of a reach the English language has in the world today. As native English speakers, we take for granted how easy it is for us to get employment in the airline industry, or how easy it is for us to travel, while for someone whose mother language is not English, it proves to be difficult. Having a universal language for everyone to communicate is the most logical approach. Just imagine the chaos if everyone spoke in their own tongue. The end.